The coldest kind of pain is the one that shows up disguised as laughter. That night, my own daughter-in-law humiliated me in front of everyone. She spoke about me in French, assuming no one would catch it. But I did. Every word, every stifled laugh that cut across the table. She called me an ignorant old woman, said my English sounded like a maid's, and that I should be ashamed to sit at such a fine table. The guests laughed. Even my son lowered his eyes, like a man wishing he could disappear. I sat there, motionless, a glass in my hand, and my heart pounding. The crystal caught the ballroom lights as if it were mocking me. For a moment I thought about getting up and leaving, but I didn't. That house, that table, and that last name existed because of me. Silence burned hotter than any comeback. They saw me as an old woman. They had no idea I'd spent years in Paris, teaching, loving, and burying the man who called me ma lumière. The same language she used to wound me was the language he used to love me. That night, her laughter became a fuse. What happened next stopped the entire party, and it proved that ignorance sometimes lives not in the one who stays quiet, but in the one who talks too much. Have you ever been humiliated by someone in your own family? Then stay with me to the end. Because this story doesn't end in tears, it ends in justice and dignity. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? My name is Margaret Duval, and before anyone called me an ignorant old woman, I was a professor of French literature at the Sorbonne in Paris. For years, I lived among books, cafes, and the sound of students dreaming big. That's where I met Jacques, an elegant, cultured diplomat with eyes that knew how to listen. I married him at 37, and for more than 2 decades, I learned what it meant to be respected. He called me ma lumière, my light. But life has a cruel habit of blowing out candles without warning. Jacques left too soon, and with him went the home, the country, the routine that felt eternal. I returned to the United States with a trunk of memories and a modest but secure inheritance, a financial trust he set up in France, protected by international clauses. It was my safe harbor, the promise of a peaceful old age. My son Michael was already married when I came back, and it was Danielle, his wife, who welcomed me into their new house. Beautiful, young, always with a glass of wine in hand and a calculated smile on her face. For the first few months, she pretended to be kind. Then came the tiny barbs. You must have been pretty once. That accent of yours is charming, for your age. Comments that dripped poison disguised as courtesy. I endured it. Not out of weakness, but because I loved my son, and I believed love could balance out ingratitude. Until the dinner. The dinner that changed everything. It was a Saturday night. Candles lit, guests laughing, clinking glasses. Danielle looked stunning and, as always, dominated the conversation. Right there, between one toast and the next, she decided to destroy me. She used French to wound me, the same French that once gave me wings. That night would not be forgotten. Not by me. Not by anyone at that table. The table was flawless. Linen napkins, French candles, porcelain plates inherited from Jacques' mother. Danielle had spent the whole day bragging about the decor. Everything looks so European, she said, wearing that smile that felt more like a challenge. I just observed. Not out of vanity, but because every detail on that table reminded me of the life I left behind in Paris. Dinner began with forced elegance. Toasts, laughter, and a parade of compliments about my son's success and Danielle's grace. I smiled politely, trying to ignore the sideways glances, but then something shifted in the air. It happened around the 3rd round of wine. Danielle looked at me and, with a light tone, said in French, Elle parle anglais comme une femme de ménage. She speaks English like a maid. Some guests laughed. Others pretended not to understand. But I understood. And the words hit me like a door slamming shut on the past. For a second, the room blurred. The clinking of silverware faded into a distant echo. My son looked away, embarrassed, and Danielle raised her glass. To family, she said triumphantly. I could have answered in the same language. I could have shamed her right there. but I chose silence. The same silence I'd learned in the lecture halls of the Sorbonne, where too many words made truth lose its weight. I stayed seated, though something inside me cracked. Respect, boundaries, calm. That woman wasn't just insulting me. She was spitting on a history I'd built with love, study, and dignity. And the cruelest part was watching my son remain quiet, trapped in his own cowardice. After the toast, Danielle approached me with false sweetness. "You didn't understand, did you?" "I did," I replied, in flawless French. Her eyes widened. She didn't know what to say. "I lived in Paris," I continued, "and I taught there what you only pretend to understand here." The room went silent. The laughter died. Even the waiter froze mid-pour. Danielle forced a laugh. "Oh, so my mother-in-law is multilingual. How interesting." But it was too late. Her mask had cracked. I finished dinner quietly, watching every gesture, the forced touches, the mechanical smiles, the guests' discomfort. I knew from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. And I also knew that the woman so proud of her own polish would eventually slip on the very thing she believed she controlled: appearances. When everyone left, I gathered my coat and looked around. The house reeked of expensive perfume and moral emptiness. Before leaving, I placed a wine-stained napkin on the sideboard with a handwritten note: "Les masques tombent toujours." Masks always fall. It wasn't revenge, it was a warning. Because from that night on, I would no longer be the submissive guest. I would be the mirror in which she'd watch her own reflection shatter. The morning after the dinner, I woke with the bitter taste of wine I hadn't even drunk. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that seems to be watching you. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, illuminating the table still set from the night before. Half-empty glasses, cold plates, wilted flowers. It all looked like a frozen scene from a social crime. I sat down slowly, feeling the weight in my body, as if the insult had left physical marks. I replayed every word Danielle had said, every glance that pretended not to hear. For a moment, I thought about calling Michael, but pride stopped me. He was there. He heard, and he chose the wrong silence. I spent the entire day trying to distract myself. I cleaned drawers, washed dishes, watered plants, but everywhere I looked, I saw memories. When I found Jacques' golden pen, the weight of his absence came rushing in like a tide. He always said, "Silence is the field where truth grows." Maybe it was time to test that. That afternoon, I got a message from Danielle. Short, venomous. "Hope you didn't take it seriously. It was just a joke." I looked at the screen and felt something awaken inside me. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. I deleted the message and put the phone away. Her game was to provoke me and then blame me for reacting. The next day, I noticed the first sign of something strange. At the bank, where I went to handle a deposit, the manager told me there had been a recent request to update my information for an international account. But I hadn't made any such request. I signed a temporary block form and asked for a copy of the document. It listed an address, the one belonging to Michael and Danielle. My stomach turned to ice. The signature looked like mine, but it wasn't. I left the bank with trembling legs. The humiliation from that dinner was no longer just moral. Something deeper, something deliberate, was unfolding. That night, I sat on the porch, listening to the faint sound of a piano coming from their house. It was Danielle. The melody was beautiful, but cold, soulless. I thought about how she needed to control everything: tone, image, people, and I realized the dinner had only been the opening move of a dangerous symphony. That night, I wrote in my journal, "It wasn't just contempt. It was a test. She wanted to see how much I could endure." I closed the notebook and felt my heartbeat steady, calm. Jacques had taught me to read between the lines, and what I was reading now was a plot. Silence, once a wound, was starting to turn into a weapon. In the days that followed, my routine turned into a quiet rehearsal of vigilance. Every phone call from the bank, every letter in the mail, Every small detail that once seemed ordinary now carried new weight. Something was wrong. I could feel it. The intuition of a woman who has lived long enough to recognize the scent of danger. I went back to the manager's office and asked to see the request in detail. He hesitated, then showed me. The forged signature was almost perfect. The M in my name was too curved, the final stroke in Duval a little too short. Tiny imperfections that only someone who's written their own name for 60 years would notice. "Who made the request?" I asked. "It came by email, ma'am." "From where?" He checked the system and showed me the sender. It was an address with the initials D.F. Danielle Foster. I left the bank with my heart tight but my eyes sharp. The humiliation now had a motive. She wanted something, and the dinner had been the cover for a bigger plan. At home, I searched through old documents, contracts, copies of Jacques' inheritance papers. I spent hours flipping through yellowed pages until I found the number of the lawyer who had handled the French trust. Leonard Goldstein. He had always been decent, discreet, loyal to Jacques. I sent a short, direct email. Subject, urgent. Suspicious request made in my name. Can you check? The next day, he replied with the calm tone of a man who knows more than he says. Margaret, I found recent movements blocked due to a signature mismatch. Someone tried to access the French fund. I'm reviewing everything. Call me as soon as possible. In that moment, my blood ran cold. My instinct had been right. The humiliation had a purpose, to distract me. I scheduled a meeting with him for the following week. In the meantime, I began to observe Danielle. Her tone changed when she saw me. The fake compliments disappeared, and her control over Michael tightened. She surrounded him with short phrases, subtle touches, and looks of disapproval whenever he tried to speak to me. One night, I pretended to sleep and overheard their conversation coming from the garden. Danielle said softly, "She won't notice. She's too old to understand what's going on." Michael answered something I couldn't hear, but his tone was tense. Her laugh cut through the air, cold, rehearsed, like contempt turned into music. I wrote it all down in my journal, every word, every expression, every gesture. Not out of revenge, but because I'd learned that memory can also be evidence. On the 5th day, I received another letter from France. A plain brown envelope, no visible sender. Inside were certified copies of the blocked transactions and a short handwritten note. "Someone is trying to erase you, Margaret. Protect yourself." Signed, Philippe, Jacques' old friend, still a diplomat in Paris. In that moment, fear gave way to clarity. What had begun as humiliation was part of something much larger, an attempt at theft disguised as family coexistence. I closed the journal and wrote one line that would guide me from then on. Silence can be the most elegant trap. I returned to Charleston 2 days before my meeting with Leonard Goldstein. A light drizzle fell, and the sky had the color of old memories. His office sat in the city's historic district, a brick building with tall windows. When I walked in, the smell of paper and burnt coffee brought me back to practical life. No more drama. It was time to act. Leonard greeted me with the gentleness of someone who knows he's in front of a woman wounded, but not broken. "Margaret, it's good to see you, even under these circumstances." "Circumstances are just masks, Leonard. What matters is what lies beneath them." He smiled and motioned for me to sit. He spread the papers across the desk methodically. There have been 3 attempts to access the French account, all with signatures resembling yours, but blocked by digital verification. He pointed to the bank's logo. And all were sent from the same IP address, located here, in Atlanta. "My son's house," I said. He nodded. "I'm afraid so." For a moment, it felt like the air left the room, but I stayed composed. "What now?" "Now we move carefully. If we accuse her without full proof, she could erase her tracks. Then we'll gather proof." Leonard opened a drawer and took out a small recorder. "Use this. Keep every conversation, every word. It could all matter." I took the device, holding it like a silent weapon. Before I left, I asked, "Do you think my son knows?" He sighed. "Maybe. Or maybe he's trapped by her manipulation. Women like that know how to make poison smell like perfume. I nodded. I know the scent. Back home, I placed the recorder on the table. Its weight felt symbolic. The truth inside it, waiting for the right moment to be heard. Over the next few days, I began recording small conversations. Danielle spoke loudly on the phone, arguing about transfers and French bureaucracy. Michael appeared tense, drained, as if living under threat. One night, I caught her saying, "If we get this done by next month, we'll finally be rid of that old woman," and her name. The phrase went straight into the recorder. Then, the sound of a forced kiss, and his silence. The next morning, I sent the audio to Leonard. He replied quickly, "Perfect. This confirms intent. We just need the documentary proof now. Philippe is collaborating with me from Paris." Seeing Philippe's name felt like breathing again. Jacques' loyal friend, an honorable man, the kind of presence that brings calm without words. Knowing he was helping gave me strength. That afternoon, I bought a new notebook and wrote, "I'm not seeking revenge. I'm seeking balance." For the first time, I slept peacefully. Fear was beginning to change sides. The first confrontation came without warning. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day when time drags the past through the house. Michael was at work, and Danielle had spent the morning barking orders at the staff as if she ruled an empire. When she saw me on the porch, she feigned surprise. "You're still here? I thought you'd gone back to Charleston." "I don't run from places I helped build," I replied. She laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "I'm glad you've gotten over that dinner. Wine makes me say too much sometimes." I looked at her slowly. "Wine doesn't speak, Danielle. It only reveals who was already ready to wound." Her smile faltered for just a moment, too quick for the inattentive eye, but I saw it. In Paris, I'd learned that pauses speak louder than words. She crossed her arms. "Are you implying something?" "No, I'm stating it." Danielle took a step closer, her eyes cold. "I know you've been contacting the bank. I only confirmed that I still exist." "Do you really think you can accuse me of something?" "I don't accuse. I observe." The silence between us was heavy as an old war. Outside, birds sang, and the sound mocked the tension. "Michael will think you're losing your mind," she said. "Maybe," I answered, "but truth is patient. It knows how to wait." For a second, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. She hid it quickly, but her body betrayed her. Restless hands, short breath, the unease of someone feeling control slip away. "Stay out of my business, Margaret." "Your business began when you touched my husband's name." She spun on her heels and walked inside, her heels striking the floor like hammers. I stayed still, breathing deeply. The anger faded, leaving behind a strange calm. The first battle was won, not because I shouted, but because she left smaller than she'd entered. Later, I wrote it all in my journal. Her eyes have changed. Fear is starting to grow where contempt once lived. That night, Michael came home exhausted. I tried to talk, but he was distant. He mentioned work, avoided the subject, and went upstairs early. On the stairs, I heard Danielle whisper something in his ear, and him reply softly, "I don't want any more lies." I smiled to myself. The truth had already begun to seep between them, and nothing corrodes a life built on appearances more than truth. I sent a short message to Leonard. "She's starting to lose her balance." He replied, "Stay calm. Time is the best witness." I went to bed at peace, knowing the first crack had opened, and from that point on, her downfall was only a matter of time. The morning after the confrontation, I woke to the sound of the mailman at the gate. Among the envelopes was a brown one, without an American stamp. The sender, Cabinet Moreau, Paris. My heart skipped. I opened it carefully. Inside were a certified copy of a bank document and a letter signed by Philippe. "Cher Margaret, we've discovered suspicious transactions in your name. I'm sending the attachments. With friendship and loyalty, Philippe." I sat at the table and began to read. The document showed 3 withdrawal attempts from Jacques' trust. All had been blocked. Reason: signature mismatch and missing personal authentication. But what froze me was the address listed on the request: the home of Michael and Danielle. My name, my story, and the legacy of the man who loved me were being used as the password to a crime. I took a deep breath and called Leonard. "I found something. I need to show you." "Come immediately," he said. I drove to his office with the folder on my lap and fury steady in my eyes. Leonard examined the papers. "Here's the proof. Attempted international fraud. Even if the money never left, the intent itself is a crime." "She signed my name?" "Yes." "And the address confirms direct involvement." He typed something on his computer and turned the screen toward me. "The house where that dinner took place was bought with funds you transferred after Jacques' death." "She used my money." "Exactly." The floor seemed to vanish beneath me. "Did Michael know?" Leonard hesitated. "He signed some of the records, perhaps without realizing their significance." I left the office feeling a deep chill, but without tears. Tears wouldn't change anything. I needed strategy, not pity. That night I called Evelyn. "Evie, I found everything. She tried to erase me, inside and out." "Then it's time to turn the lights on," she said. I tucked the envelope away and decided to go to their house. I waited until the lights went out. The side gate was ajar. I slipped inside quietly. My heartbeat was steady, calm. The living room smelled of French perfume, the same Jacques once gave me. It felt like mockery. I opened the desk drawer and found a red folder locked with a small key. Forcing it open felt like trespassing, but curiosity won. Inside were papers too neatly organized not to be suspicious. Receipts, contracts, printed emails. Among them, an authorization for a bank transfer, bearing my forged signature. I tucked everything into my purse. Before leaving, I noticed a photo frame turned face down. I flipped it over. It was an old photo of Jacques and me in the Luxembourg Gardens. On the back, in his handwriting, "Pour toujours ma lumière." My stomach clenched. Danielle had hidden the purest memory of my past. This wasn't just fraud, it was desecration. I left the house silently and sat in my car. Called Leonard. "I have the evidence." "Excellent. We can act now." "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because she needs to destroy herself first." Leonard sighed. "Be careful, Margaret. Caution is what's kept me alive this long. Now it's her turn to be afraid." I hung up and leaned my head against the steering wheel. The glass reflected my tired face, but my eyes were firm. Danielle thought I was a shadow from the past. But the past is dangerous. It always comes back, with debts to settle. The days that followed were filled with silence and precision. I moved as if walking on glass, careful, deliberate, alert to every sound and shadow. In the mornings, I walked along the beach to quiet my thoughts. In the afternoons, I met discreetly with Leonard and Philippe. At night, I reviewed documents by lamplight, while the wind made the curtains sway. Leonard gathered the evidence and cross-checked the records. Every transfer attempt came from Danielle's home IP address, always at times when Michael was at work. Philippe, with his diplomat's patience, tracked down the intermediary, Ryan Hale, a financial consultant from Atlanta. The pattern was clear. Danielle forged the paperwork, and Hale executed the access attempts, funded, ironically, by money from the sale of my old apartment. "She wanted to erase the link between the past and the money," Leonard explained, "to strip your name from the roots of the story." "But she forgot that I'm still breathing," I answered. Philippe crossed his arms and said in French, "La vérité n'a pas besoin de courir. Elle attend." Truth doesn't need to run. It waits. Leonard reviewed a new batch of emails. "Here," she wrote, "the old lady won't notice." The phrase cut deeper than her insult at the dinner table, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything. That was the true face of arrogance. I sent a copy of the file to Philippe And he replied just hours later, "I'm with the prosecutor in Paris. The bank will cooperate." At our third meeting, Leonard suggested filing a formal complaint, but I hesitated. Not yet. Why not? Because I want her to reveal herself. He looked at me with that quiet respect reserved for those who understand the difference between justice and revenge. Then we wait for the right moment. That evening, Philippe walked me home. We spoke little. At the gate, he said, "Jacques believed in you, Margaret. Serenity was always your weapon." "And it still is," I replied. The next day, I received a message from Michael. "We need to talk." We met at a cafe downtown. He looked worn out. Dark circles, weary eyes, guilt sitting heavy between us. "Danielle says you're trying to destroy us," he began. "I'm trying to save what's left of the truth." I pulled an envelope from my purse and slid it toward him. "Do you recognize this address?" He read in silence. His hands trembled. "She said it was just a routine update." It was forgery. His face fell apart. "What should I do?" "Open your eyes, Michael. The worst kind of blindness is the one that comes from loving the wrong person." We walked together to the car. Before getting in, he squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry, Mom." Feeling sorry is good, but now it's time to act. 2 days later, Leonard confirmed. The account freeze had been filed, and Philippe assured that the French authorities were fully cooperating. The net was tightening. Meanwhile, Danielle grew restless. She paced the house like a woman sensing her own fate. The fake laughter, the midnight phone calls, the way she clung to my son, it all smelled of fear. One Tuesday morning, Evelyn knocked on my door. Brought coffee and some news. Good or bad? Depends how you look at it. The local paper got a leak about an international fraud investigation. Her name's hinted between the lines. I smiled without saying a word. Time had started to speak. That night, I wrote another line in my journal. She thought my silence was weakness. But silence is the sound of preparation. I looked out the window. The moon reflected on the glass, returning the image of a tired but whole woman. I was no longer the humiliated mother-in-law. I was the invisible voice moving the gears of justice. The morning of Michael and Danielle's wedding anniversary dawned gray, as if the whole city sensed something would end that night. I woke early, brewed coffee, and sat on the porch, watching the steam rise from the cup. The wind played with the curtains, and in my mind, I heard Jacques' voice, what he used to say whenever the world seemed unjust. Masks fall when silence stands firm. The phone rang. It was Evelyn. "Maggie, I had a strange dream. You were in a ballroom wearing blue, and everyone was applauding you." I smiled, my voice calm. "Then maybe the dream was a warning. Tonight's their dinner party." "Are you going?" "I am, but not alone." That afternoon, Philippe arrived, carrying a dark leather folder. Leonard sent the documents. The analysis confirms it: falsification and attempted fraud. I took the envelope carefully. "And Michael?" "He's in shock. He said he'll be there, but wants to hear everything." "Then tonight will be perfect." Before I left, Philippe handed me something small, a golden pen. It was Jacques'. "You'll need it to sign the end of this story." I held the pen and felt its weight, symbolic, grounding. Shortly before dinner, Evelyn arrived with a flower-shaped brooch in her hand. "Pretty, isn't it? But the real magic is inside." "Inside?" She winked. "A camera. It records everything. If she tries to humiliate you again, the world will see who Danielle Foster really is." I hugged my friend in silence. When I arrived, the house was glowing with lights, the garden full of guests. Danielle wore a pale dress and that same counterfeit smile. When she saw me, she froze for a second. "What a surprise, Margaret." Surprises keep the night interesting. Philippa blended in among the men by the fireplace. Evelyn stood near the other guests, her journalist's eyes scanning every corner. Michael came over, tense. "Mom, thank you for coming." I came for the truth, son. Nothing else. Danielle raised her glass and asked for attention. Tonight, we celebrate love and trust. Her words echoed with irony. When the toast ended, I stepped to the center of the room. Danielle, speaking of trust, perhaps we should toast to honesty as well. She looked at me with disdain. What are you trying to say? I opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. You tried to access my husband's trust. You forged my signature, and you bought this house with my money. A murmur rippled through the room. Felipe handed certified copies to the family lawyer. Evelyn discreetly filmed everything. Michael stared at his wife in shock. Is that true? Danielle laughed, trembling. This is all a bitter old woman's fantasy. Philippe crossed his arms. Then explain, madame, why the email request came from this address. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. The audience watched her unravel. The power was shifting, and for the first time, I felt no anger, only peace. In the back of the room, the music stopped. Danielle tried to hold her composure, but fragility seeped through every movement. The party was about to turn into a courtroom. I only needed one last line. You called me ignorant, Danielle, but real ignorance is believing knowledge grows old. And at that moment, I knew. The game had changed. For a few seconds, the entire room froze. The clinking of glasses stopped. The music faded and the air grew heavy. Danielle gripped her glass so tightly that it trembled. Her smile was a mask cracking in real time. Do you all believe this? She shouted. An old, bitter woman trying to destroy her own son. I looked straight at her. Resentment is just the name the guilty give to the memory of the innocent. A murmur spread across the room. Philippe handed more documents to the family lawyer. Official forensic reports, forged signatures, blocked transfers, IP records from this very house. Danielle laughed loudly, a sound more like a cry for help. This is a misunderstanding. It's persecution. Truth doesn't chase anyone, I replied. It simply waits to be seen. Michael stepped closer. Danielle, tell me it's not true. They're lying, she screamed. Philippe, calm as ever, asked, And what about this email, madame? If we do it quickly, the old woman will never know. The room fell silent. Danielle tried to speak, but the words got stuck in her throat. I walked to the center of the room. At that dinner when you humiliated me, you used French to hide your cruelty. Tonight, I'll use it to expose who you are. In a clear, steady voice, I said, La vérité n'a pas besoin de crier. Elle se montre. Truth doesn't need to shout. It shows itself. People began whispering. Some stepped away from her. Others came closer to me. Power was slipping from Danielle's hands like spilled wine. You've ruined my life, she screamed, tears of rage in her eyes. I only showed it to you. Michael lowered his head. I trusted you, he said, his voice breaking. I signed my mother's name thinking it was just paperwork. Danielle reached out to him, but he stepped back. Don't touch me. In that moment, she lost everything. The image, the control, the marriage. And in front of everyone, the woman who once called me ignorant revealed her true self, a desperate imposter. Leonard, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward with 2 court officers. One of them spoke. Mrs. Danielle Foster, you are hereby notified of an investigation for attempted property fraud and forgery of signature. Her face went pale. This is a setup. It's justice, Leonard replied. The family lawyer asked for calm, but chaos had already arrived. Danielle sobbed, switching between English and French, trying to justify the unjustifiable. Then the waiter, the young man who had served at that first dinner, approached and said softly, Madame, I understood everything that night. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I felt something rare, recognition, not of power, but of dignity. Philippe rested a hand on my shoulder. It's over. Not yet, I said. There's still the silence. I turned to Danielle, still trembling. You taught me the value of silence, Danielle. I used it to build your downfall." The sound of shattering glass filled the air as she dropped her wine glass. The echo of crystal breaking became the final punctuation. Michael wept. "Mom, forgive me." "Forgiveness isn't asked for, Michael. It's proven." Evelyn stopped recording and came closer. "It's all on video. The world will see what happened here." The officers escorted Danielle out of the room. The doors closed, and the party ended in a silence heavier than any words spoken that night. I lifted my intact glass slowly. To the truth, the toast was unanimous, and that night, I learned there is no sound louder than the noise of shame hitting the floor. After Danielle's downfall, the house sank into a nearly funereal silence. The guests slipped away quickly, too embarrassed to meet my eyes. Philippe and Evelyn stayed. Michael, stunned, locked himself in the study. The room still smelled of expensive perfume and shame. It was the end of an era. "What will you do now?" Evelyn asked. "Nothing rash," I said. "Haste is the disguise of guilt." Philippe nodded. "You have the upper hand now, Margaret, but you must consolidate it." The next morning, Leonard called. "The evidence has been submitted to the court. Danielle will be formally charged within 72 hours. "And Michael?" "He'll be summoned as a witness, not a suspect." I sighed in relief. Justice was finally moving forward. But I wanted more than a verdict. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own contempt, and for the world to see that a quiet woman can be far more dangerous than a loud one. I spent the week organizing documents, sorting letters, and revisiting everything Jacques and I had built together. Among the papers, I found his old will. There it was, the forgotten clause, the right to dedicate part of the estate to the education of women in vulnerable situations. It was the seed of something greater. I smiled. I invited Leonard and Philippe for tea that Saturday. "I want to reopen the cultural foundation Jacques dreamed of." Philippe looked at me, surprised. "After all this?" "Because of all this, women must see that dignity can't be destroyed by mockery." Leonard reviewed the documents. "This is more than a symbolic gesture. It's moral counterattack." "Exactly," I said. "I want to turn humiliation into legacy." While the legal process advanced, Danielle tried to contact me several times. Long messages filled with excuses, fake regrets, and disguised insults. I deleted everyone. Silence would be my final reply. The following Sunday, the local newspaper headline read, "Businesswoman investigated for international fraud. Court freezes Danielle Foster's assets." The photos showed the same gate that had once seen me walk in silently and leave victorious. That night, Michael came to see me. "Mom, I don't know how to make things right." "Making things right begins when truth is accepted." He bowed his head. "I'll testify for you." "Not for me, son. For your father's memory." The next week, Philippe organized a private press meeting at the French embassy. Evelyn's video of that night was shown behind closed doors, to officials only. The reaction was immediate. Danielle's name became synonymous with scandal, and mine, with silent strength. Later that day, Leonard called. "Margaret, the court wants to hear you. I'll be there. And after that? Then I'll return to Paris. There's something waiting for me to rebuild." That evening, I sat on the porch, watching the clear sky. The breeze carried the scent of magnolias, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. I opened my journal and wrote, "When people underestimate a woman, all they're really doing is giving her time to prepare." Evelyn arrived with 2 glasses of wine. "To you, Maggie, for the lesson that will inspire others." We toasted. The clink of glass sounded like a seal. Justice was in motion, and my plan was complete. Without revenge, without hate, only truth and dignity. The courthouse in Atlanta was packed. Reporters filled the corridors, their murmurs blending into a restless buzz. The air smelled of old coffee and tension. I sat in the second row, Leonard on my left, Philippe right behind me. Danielle arrived 10 minutes later, escorted by her lawyer, dressed in black, hair tied back, her face pale. The same face that once flaunted arrogance now hid fear. Michael entered soon after. No one spoke. The silence between mother and son said everything. The judge, a weary man with a deep voice, began the session. Case number 419, State of Georgia versus Danielle Foster. The gavel struck. Leonard presented the evidence: emails, French bank records, forged signatures, and the video from the dinner. Each document landed like a stone, slow, deliberate, building the foundation of truth. Danielle kept her head high, but her hands trembled. Her lawyer tried to argue temporary insanity, claiming psychological pressure and emotional distress. The judge interrupted. "Did you know what you were doing?" Danielle hesitated. I thought it was my husband's right. Your husband had no access to the account. I only wanted what was fair. Fairness isn't theft, Mrs. Foster. Camera flashes burst across the room. Philippe watched quietly, with the calm of someone who has seen power collapse before truth. Evelyn, among the journalists, captured everything. Michael looked years older, drained by guilt and shame. When the judge called for my testimony, time seemed to slow. I stood up slowly. My legs were steady, my breath measured. The courtroom, with its polished wood and heavy curtains, reminded me of the Sorbonne lecture halls, where I'd learned that words are sacred when born of truth. Mrs. Duval, would you like to share your version? Yes, Your Honor. I stepped forward, holding the golden pen Philippe had given me. This pen belonged to my husband. With it, he signed the document that guaranteed my right to age in peace. I paused. Danielle Foster tried to steal not just money, but memory. She tried to erase the story of a woman who loved, taught, and believed in the power of words. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. I continued. She used the same language that once expressed my husband's love to humiliate me. I turned to Danielle. But French isn't just her language, it's mine too. And in French, I added, Le respect ne se mendie pas, il se mérite. Respect isn't begged for, it's earned. The judge nodded, visibly moved. Leonard stood. Your Honor, the victim seeks no financial compensation, only the restoration of truth. The judge adjusted his glasses. That's rare. It's human, I replied. The defense made one last attempt. My client suffers from adjustment disorder. No, sir, I interrupted. She suffers from arrogance. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge struck the gavel. Order. Danielle finally broke down. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted what she had. I met her gaze. You never wanted what I had, Danielle. You wanted what you thought I was. Weak. The judge made his notes, then declared, Given the evidence and testimony, I find Danielle Foster guilty of forgery, attempted international fraud, and moral harm. Leonard asked, The sentence, Your Honor. 3 years house arrest, asset seizure, and full restitution. The gavel fell again. It was over. The audience stirred. Philippe stood and came to me. You've won. No, truth won. Evelyn approached, eyes wet. Maggie, this moment will inspire so many women. Then let it inspire the right kind of silence, Evie, the kind that comes before action. Michael wept. Mom, I swear I didn't know. I believe you. Now it's time to rebuild what fear destroyed. As the courtroom emptied, Danielle was escorted out. Before leaving, she looked back at me. For a brief second, I saw the woman without masks, tired, human, defeated. I lowered my gaze, not out of pity, but out of respect for the fall of another. No one needs to trample ruins to prove they've won. When I stepped outside, the sun was setting. Golden light poured over the courthouse steps, as if the world was giving me back its color. Philippe walked beside me, and Evelyn filmed quietly from a distance. On the sidewalk, a woman approached, the mother of the waiter from that fateful dinner. Madame, My son told me about you. He said the way you answered, without shouting, was beautiful. I took her hand. Tell him it was his look that gave me strength that night. She smiled. The world needs more women who win in silence. I got into the car, but before closing the door, I looked back. The courthouse seemed smaller now, perhaps because the weight I carried was gone. I pulled out the golden pen and wrote on a scrap of paper. Jacques, justice has arrived. Love triumphed over disdain. I slipped the note into my purse. And for the first time since Paris, I felt whole again. 3 months after the trial, life felt different. The house was lighter. The air itself seemed easier to breathe. The curtains stayed open now, letting the sunlight pour in without fear. No ghosts haunted the walls anymore. Danielle was serving her sentence under house arrest, far from here, and the silence she once mocked was now her only companion. Michael came to visit every Sunday. He brought flowers, sat on the porch, and spoke little. But our silence now was peaceful, not guilty. One afternoon he said, I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness, Mom. Forgiveness isn't a prize, Michael. It's a choice, and I've chosen peace. Evelyn remained as loyal as ever. She published an article about the case titled, The Elegance of Silence, When Truth Speaks for Itself. It went viral. Hundreds of women wrote in, sharing stories of disrespect, underestimation, and late rebirths. I realized my pain had become a collective voice. Felipe had returned to Paris but called me every day. The foundation is ready, Margaret. The first scholarship recipients have been selected. Women? All of them. Young, mature, widows, mothers, just as you wanted. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. It felt as if Jacques was smiling somewhere unseen. On the porch, I wrote in my journal, they tried to steal my past, and I turned it into the future. Time moved gently. The scars softened, almost tender now. Justice had been served, but the real victory was within, rediscovering who I was without needing to defend it anymore. One morning, the mailman brought a package from France. Inside was a photograph, Jacques and me, laughing in front of the Sorbonne. On the back, in his handwriting, Pour que tu n'oublies jamais qui tu es. So that you never forget who you are. I smiled. I hadn't forgotten. That afternoon, I sat on the porch with a book open and a calm heart. The distant sound of the ocean blended with birdsong. No shouting, no judgment. Only the peace of someone who survived injustice without losing dignity. In that moment, I understood. The truest victory isn't proving they were wrong. It's living so that they realize it on their own. And that's exactly what I did. A year later, I returned to Paris. The foundation was thriving inside an old townhouse in the Latin Quarter. On the walls hung photographs of women who had reclaimed their education, their confidence, their voices. At the center stood a plaque bearing Jacques' name and a phrase in French, La dignité est la lumière des femmes. Dignity is the light of women. Philippe waited for me at the door with his familiar smile. You did it, Margaret. We did it. The hall was full. Young women read poetry aloud. The French language, the same one that had once wounded me, now sounded like music. Evelyn was there too, microphone in hand, broadcasting the event live. When she called me to the stage, the audience applauded. I walked slowly, feeling the weight of my story settle softly on my shoulders. Looking out at the crowd, I said, A year ago, I was called ignorant for speaking little. Today I speak even less, but the world listens. A gentle laugh rippled through the room. I continued, This foundation was born from silence, and it is in silence that many of us find our strength again. Felipe placed Jacques' golden pen beside me. I signed the first scholarship certificate for the new students. As the ink dried, I thought of everything I had lived through, the mockery, the humiliation, the fear. And I realized that every pain had been a seed. Today, it had blossomed into dignity. Later, from the hotel balcony, I wrote the final lines in my journal. I was called ignorant, but the ignorance was theirs, those who mistake gentleness for weakness. Silence was my answer. Justice, my language. I closed the notebook and looked up at the Paris sky. The breeze carried the same magnolia scent as my garden back home. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the past and present walking side by side. Now I speak to you, the one listening to me. If you've ever been humiliated, if someone tried to silence your voice, remember this. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned, and time always reveals who's truly strong. So subscribe and share this story. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what it taught you. Because when one woman speaks, all the others rise with her.